Hi, Lydia. Welcome to the Lives of the Artists. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, just recovering from a solo show and figuring out how to be a human again.
You just got back from your solo show in Berlin?
No, it opens at the end of the month, but I just got out of the cyclone, as I like to call it, which is the sort of studio bubble you're in, just constantly producing for several months, not socializing, and then you come out and you're like, what do I do now?
Yeah, absolutely. Know how that feels. So, how long have you been producing this work for this solo show? When did you start producing the work?
Conceptualizing it for a while, but I actually collaborated with my friends who are fashion photographers. They're called Scandibergs, and I asked them to take photos of me in a water tank for the show.
Oh, wow.
So I did the photo shoot January 16th, I think. And from there, it was just kind of like full speed ahead until the end of May.
Well, so yeah, about 6 months really, that from start to finish.
Yeah.
And and how does it feel that you finished the body of work? Does it? I mean, do you kind of like feel like, oh my God, what do I do now? What's the feeling?
I mean, it feels great getting the pieces to the position you want them to be and to have the desired effect. Like you can never guarantee that that's going to happen, but I feel like as long as you understand your own process and make sure you block out enough time for problem solving and all that kind of stuff, it feels good when it's done. But then yeah, you always have that like blank studio moment where the work gets collected and there's nothing there and you're like, it's kind of jarring. You're like, oh God, like what do I do now?
Yeah.
um
What do you do now? What do you typically do?
well, I think it is a good time to take a break, um and just kind of reintegrate into society.
Yeah.
uh, Go to shows, do studio visits with other people, hang out with people, go to movies, whatever, to rest.
Yeah. So you really go quite intense. That's how you like to work. It's like this intense period of work and production, and then it's kind of like a chill time for a while until the next
Yeah.
deadline comes, I guess.
Yeah. I think honestly, it's a lifelong, like from the way how I've heard from other people too. It's like, it's always a lifelong balancing act in terms of like labor and making sure you take care of yourself when you're doing something that you love. Um, I think it's super easy to, my first solo show with my gallery in 2023, I worked really, really, really hard for a really long time. And then as soon as I finished the work, I got so sick. Like I started having, when I landed in Berlin for my show, I got shingles. I had like this crazy infection thing going on with my bladder, and like it was just, and I was just exhausted. And I think your body gets you through these processes of making, especially when it's something you're passionate about, but then sometimes if you're not careful, it's really easy to collapse because when you love what you're doing, you sometimes don't even notice that you're overworking yourself.
Wow, it does seem like you put a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah, well, and it's also, I think it's quite easy. I think unless you are for some reason so confident in yourself that you think it's all going to work out all the time, and um which I don't think I've ever met an artist who's just like so certain of everything that they have zero self-doubt. I think it's quite common to, because the stakes are high, like there's people depending on you um to make work that is compelling, not just for sales but also for the reputation of the gallery, for public interaction, press, all that stuff. And I have to rely on my own skills to make money, which sometimes works, and sometimes, like now when the market is horrible, you can kind of do your best and it still doesn't work out sometimes. So it's always, there's always a lot of pressure, but it's a good pressure. I think it's one that it's a privilege to engage with, because there's so many people who would be thrilled to have these kinds of problems rather than the problem of a job that you hate. you know
For sure, yeah. How do you find the press and the media interactions and the podcasts and things like
Yeah.
that? Do you enjoy it? Have you learned to enjoy it, or is it just something that you just kind of God, put the mask on, have to do it?
Um, Honestly, the one skill I have, I think, that has been a big asset to me is my willingness to put myself out there and talk to anyone. Um, I've gotten really comfortable speaking about my work after, especially after the past 5 years, and I think it's always exciting to speak to someone new about it because often you'll be given insight about your own practice that you don't even pick up on your own because every single person coming to your work has a different set of experiences and perspective, and they may see things in your work that you don't see yourself. So it's always exciting to talk about it with people, I think. And press, obviously there's always a fear of like someone being like, this sucks. But I haven't had that yet, but I fully anticipate at some point that, I'm going to get a bad review and, you know, everyone does.
Most of those people have never picked up a paintbrush in their life, so their
Yeah.
opinion is really, at the end of the day, in all honesty and seriousness, it's completely invalid. It means
Yeah.
nothing.
And that is tough, I think, when you believe in your work so much and you also feel like you're being quite genuine with what you're making. Like you're not just making something that looks good or that is palatable for the trends of the time or whatever. You're really trying to like tap into something and share it with people. Obviously, it's like a knife in the gut if people don't get it. I've been very
Mm.
fortunate though, because my work can get kind of insane. Like, because sourcing imagery from horror movies and kind of depicting myself in ways that are like objectively unflattering and quite scary.
Oh, I've been following your latest work on Instagram, and I mean, it's getting better and better and better. I'll say that for
That's so
one
nice.
thing. The progression is amazing. But first time we met was 2019, and you were already talking about this. The idea you had of putting yourself into these, in this horror movie kind of genre, and it's just progressed. And the latest paintings with you, with with just the dots as eyes,
Yeah,
standing
the
on
glowing
rocks and
eyes.
things are incredible, incredible works. I mean, like moving. If I walked into a gallery and saw that, or walked into a house and saw that on someone's wall, I'd be like, my mouth would drop. It'd be like, wow, it would just like make me feel something that I tell you what it is. It's like when you watch a Stanley Kubrick movie and it makes you feel something, but you're not really sure what that feeling is.
Yeah,
It just makes you feel strange and in this kind of twilight zone, but it makes you feel like you're looking at art. And I love that feeling. And that's what your
yeah.
paintings make me feel like.
That is very sweet. I didn't even realize, I didn't even remember that we had talked about it, but yeah, in 2019, that was the very first time I married my passion for horror with my work because I wrote my dissertation as a haunted house story, as a big allegory of like living with PTSD as like being a haunted house. And that was the first time I introduced the subject matter into my work. And so it is nice getting to talk to you like 6 years later
Yeah.
and seeing how much things have changed and how much that breakthrough moment has like, you know, bred a totally different body of work that yeah, and it gets more challenging and it gets more. I think sometimes when you have stuff that you have ideas that you makes you feel uncomfortable or you're worried it'll make other people feel uncomfortable, it's quite easy to be like, I'm not going to do that because it's too much of a risk. But I've found every time I've
Well, it's
taken it.
not for me. It's not uncomfortable. I think people that consume art on a limited basis might feel uncomfortable because they almost don't know what to do with those feelings. So they just put it
Yeah,
in the too weird basket. But like if someone's watching a lot of horror movies, they really get an idea and a feel for what's good and what's well done and everything like that.
yeah,
And if you're consuming a lot of paintings and you're looking at all kinds of different art, then actually that feeling is really amazing feeling. Like I was talking about the Stanley Kubrick feeling, or,
yeah,
or a David Lynch film. When you're watching a David Lynch film and it just has this atmosphere that makes you feel something, but you're not quite sure what it is. That's kind of the mystery of art that I love.
yeah. I think art hits you in the subconscious in a way that very few other things do. I think that feeling of sort of the uncanny and like dread, that's something that I definitely, you know, cinema is obviously really important to me. And people like David Lynch and Stanley Kubrick were like mystifying to me when I was younger. Like I've always loved the movie The Shining, but I remember the first time I saw like Eraserhead, the Lynch film, I was just like, what is this? But in a way that I loved because it didn't make any sense really. But you know, I think he was definitely making art in film. Like he was letting the
100%.
film connect with you. And that's something I think our relationship with our own drive and our own gut instinct, I think is what creates moments like that where you want to make something, you don't know why you want to make it, but you have this drive in you to do it and you just have to trust yourself.
It's almost more touching when you hit someone doesn't know anything about art, almost like Caravaggio painting to a pilgrim in Rome kind of
Yeah.
thing. It's like he painted for the everyday person. He wasn't painting for the popes in the Vatican, you know. And it kind of it cuts through. It cuts through. It cuts through the the all the kind of all the clothes that you wear of reality, and it just cuts through all of that and hits you.
Yeah, and it becomes something that transcends like education and status and stuff. I think,
It transcends. That's the key word. It
yeah.
transcends. You know.
And I think that is like I think there's a place for all kinds of art, even art that I think sucks, you know? Like I think that, you know, there are people whose passion is like high academic, theory based, research based art, and that's what they make. And I don't know what's going on when I look at it, but it's okay, right? But I do think having a degree of accessibility in your work so that a lot of people can meet you at different places with the painting, that makes me really happy because it means that I can talk to more people, right? I don't I don't want to be someone who only paints for people with master's degrees.
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to work like to what am I trying to say? Sometimes I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, and our training is very much this classical training.
Yeah.
Um, but if you stay within that classical training and you get dogmatic about it and you think that that's the only form of art, then you become very close to everything else. So you kind of become academic. And that's
Yeah.
fine. That's absolutely fine. My
Yeah.
brother's an academic, and some people need to be academics, but I'm just not like that. I think true artists and art needs to be open to the possibility of anything.
Yeah.
Like you have to be open to create. You have to be open to everything. Like try to not be judgmental, and just be open. It's a really key part of creativity because you can inform yourself from anywhere, really. I mean, you come from watching an Indian Bollywood film to, listening to music you've never heard before. It can come
Yeah.
from everywhere if you're open to it. But if you've just got this
Yeah.
dogmatic
And I
view of
think
what it could be, then you really aren't going to create much of interest.
it's important to continue the tradition of very classical painting and like keeping that information and that education alive is super important, but we all have to be realistic and know like the world around it changes. And it's important to be humble and to be like, there might be an approach that doesn't make sense to me at first, but then actually is super interesting and new and whatever. I think
But it's also just the fact that I love to look at a classical, like okay, let's say a Caravaggio painting
oh,
or
me
a
too.
Rembrandt painting or something like that. I love to look at those, but I also like to watch a David Lynch film. Like it's not
Yeah.
like I just like one thing. Like I'm open to everything, and I'm open to all of these different ways to create and communicate and to show your art. I mean, if you look at David Lynch's life, he was making films, he was making music, he was making sculptures, he was making paintings.
Yeah, he was
Everything kind
trained
of
as a painter.
he trained as a painter. That was his first love, yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that really informed his filmmaking because he was open to all forms of creativity and art and everything, and it created a much more interesting human being, and because of that, interesting art, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, have you seen Peter Greenaway's films?
Remind me, what films are they? Because
His
I
most, I
recognize
think
the
his
name.
most famous film is The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover with
No, I haven't seen them, but I've seen
so
images of them. They look
he
incredibly beautiful.
is he is a classically trained painter. He then went and made films, and that film, Gautier did the costumes and everything. It was all based around this one Rembrandt painting. And he has a film where this guy's obsessed with Vermeer and is continuously trying to like recreate these Vermeer paint. I mean, that was the first time I really saw sort of like a classical art form, like, because I watched that when I was quite young. And I was so intrigued by this like enmeshing between contemporary and classic art forms, and how they're all the same formal elements that we deal with every day of like light, shadow, composition, but chroma, and I think that's what's exciting about it, because these things that people keep trying to say are dead. I've gotten the painting is dead line before, which I think is so 1960. Get over yourself.
My God, who says that? I think painting is the only kind of form of art that's really stayed with it. I mean, there was a period of time, when pop artists and people kind of it did kind of die off, but Basquiat and the New Yorkers of the 80s really brought it back. I mean, it hasn't really died.
Yeah. And people are like, it's over, it's done.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for them, and fortunately for me, I think truly people will never stop wanting to look at other people. And, stuff like AI and this new generative threat, whatever, I don't think it'll ever truly be able to replace something that we're talking about, this innate human reaction to art and this like subconscious communication between art and artist and viewer.
And experience, like human experience, I think is going to become more of a commodity, because I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. If you think about, like, for example, metaphorically, like a Roman going out to try and find out what the time of the day was, and he'd go and look at a sundial and he'd kind of work out where the sun was coming from, or he'd look at the sky and see where the sun was in the sky and try and work out what time of day it was. Fast forward to like someone with a pocket watch, taking it out of his watch, opening the face of it and looking. These are very experiential, and nowadays, all this information is just so quick to us. So I really think that moving forwards with AI taking care of a lot of problems when it comes to like information and things like that, I think that the human experience is going to become a real commodity. And of course, like, one of the ultimate human experiences is experiencing art, whether it be music or film or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I was speaking to someone else about this. They, because there's the conversation of like, will AI replace artists? Like, will that get so advanced that there's not a place for us anymore? But they said basically, human made art is going to become even more unique, because if you can generate stuff with AI, then everyone can do it, and it's just going to flood everything.
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
Going to be an innumerable amount of AI created art. So that then makes human made art even more precious, because of the time and the labor and the skill and the history behind it, versus something that can be made in
I'm not that worried. I'm not like a doomsday person with AI. I might be kicking myself in like 20, 30 years time, where it's taking everyone's jobs and no one has any money and we're all like living in this apocalypse. But it's been good to me so far. I find it fascinating. Possibilities are fascinating. I think it's endlessly interesting, like what we can do with. But people have been talking like this for hundreds and hundreds of years about the end of the world's coming, and I think it's just the fear of the unknown.
Well, I also think these things are all just tools. It's about who is control of them. And so for me, like, regulate it immediately, because we don't want this insane technology to be in the hands of like one billionaire.
I was reading the other day that it is for the next 10 years, it cannot be regulated.
Well,
in the US.
If that new bill is signed into law.
Okay, so that's what I was reading.
That's the big beautiful bill that
right. So that's what's
that would
in the
be
bill.
Absolutely insane. I mean, that's one of the really there's a lot of insane stuff in it, but that's like one of the really insane things.
Why do you think that they don't want it to be regulated for 10 years? That seems
Because a lot of the people who funded Trump's like campaign are tech billionaires, and they want to have complete free
full
reign
control.
with
Right.
data collection and development, all this stuff. They don't want anyone getting in their business with AI, certainly not the
Right.
government. And so basically, you know, he's just, this man doesn't have any principles. So it's just whoever pays him enough money, he'll like put that, you know, he'll do what they want.
Yeah, I see. I see. I'm not sure what I think about that. I'd have to think about it. But I mean, taking Trump out of it, I'm just thinking like philosophically,
Yeah.
do I believe in, oh, you know, like people telling you what to do, or do I just believe in let's see what happens kind of thing?
I
At the,
think it's there's a really good example of why it should be regulated is deep fake porn. Because
right.
basically anyone can make porn of you or of me that looks completely real.
Wow, I didn't
And
even think about that. Yeah, that's terrible.
yeah, so imagine that, and then all the other things that one can do with AI, and why it absolutely needs to be regulated, because you know, these things aren't crimes yet. Like, you'd think that finding, for example, there's like all these people who are finding fake porn of themselves, but they can't actually do anything about it because the law hasn't caught up with it.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, and it is there's so many things that could go right and so many things that could go wrong. And I think that you have to have common sense, like basic parameters when it comes to like personal harm and stuff like
Mm,
that.
mm.
Um, and I also think, you know, I'm a big, you know, labor advocate. I also think that people have to stay prioritized over technology. So like, we can't push every single job out of the market and just have everyone be poor. It would
Yeah.
be a disaster. So
Yeah, I heard they're introducing self-driving taxis into London, I think next year. So, you know,
yeah, although
they're
I'm not
in.
convinced that's going to work given the city planning. Like, it is not LA, you know. It's this place is crazy with the type of roads and traffic laws. I think it would be a lot harder, but we'll see.
I think English people are quite good at queuing. You think it's pretty chaotic?
I think the car is not English,
No.
so I think we'll see. No, English people are good at queuing. It's more like these are old roads. It's not a grid system, so it's not something that you can go. You can give. I guess you could like input a map of the city. I don't know anything about AI, so I don't know what I'm talking about.
You
But
seem
I
like
think
you know
this,
quite a lot. I'm very interested to talk to you about it.
yeah, what's interesting and, you know, the human experience of it is something I'm very interested in. Like,
Yeah.
I
Philosophically, you're more interested in the idea of it.
yeah, and I think also the impact, because like ultimately, I think why people like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, all these people are interested in AI is because it will become even easier to become more and more wealthy, because you're cutting out the middleman of the worker, basically. You're
Hmm.
going to be able to program this thing to do stuff for you and generate wealth for you, and then you don't even have to pay anyone anymore. And
Hmm.
so that is a problem when there's already like the biggest wealth disparity in probably in modern history in the States. You know, it's really bad. And that's why you're seeing all this crazy stuff go on. Um,
That happened with the Luddites in the Industrial Revolution, though. They used to go around and smash all the new machines that were getting built, and so it's like it's weird how these archetypes repeat themselves in throughout history over and over again. You know, it's
yeah, and I
similar
think,
storylines repeat themselves.
oh yeah, always. And I think technology is always, you know, for example, social media is another good option. I think it's an incredibly double-edged sword. I think there's magnificent things that have happened because of social media. I think there's horrific things that have happened because of it.
Mm,
And it's all a matter of who's in control of it, basically. And so I think that's why as people we have to be very vigilant about pushing to make sure that either it's nationalized, it's something that we can all be a part of or like have a say in, or that if someone has control of it, there's regulations to protect people, you know?
yeah, you never speak to someone who says, "Yeah, I've just been on social media for 3 days. It was just so refreshing. I feel great."
No, and then you
They
think
always
about it,
say,
it's
"I
like,
put down my phone for 3 days and I had a social media detox, and then they feel great."
and that's the thing, like we're also like completely dependent on a lot of things that if they were taken from us, we would not really know how to function in a lot of ways these days.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
many
it's
things are
changed human behavior, hasn't it?
interwoven.
It's changed human behavior.
Yeah. And
These
again,
tech
don't get me
giants have
wrong,
changed.
I love convenience. I love being able to like order something and have it delivered the next day. All these things are like really amazing and not bad, but it also, I think our patience doesn't exist anymore. I think we're getting so used to immediate gratification that I think it's going to affect our psyche for real.
I think it already is. I mean, that like
Yeah.
getting back to the experiential
Oh
idea,
yeah,
like
painting.
when we used to walk on the high street, or walk on the just walk on the shopping on streets, and we go in here and we go in there and we buy this and that from different shops. That whole thing is an experience that's just been totally, like you say, it's cut the worker out. All these shops are empty now. And you just do it at the click of a
Yeah.
button on your phone, and it cuts all that experience out. And when they arrive at your door, it's more the idea in your head of like getting this new stuff. It's not
Yeah.
satisfying at all for it just to, I mean, the
And
experience
I miss that.
itself is not satisfying.
I miss small shops. Like I miss going to places. I think, and then because we get this immediate gratification that we can get at home in our comfort space, that space goes away. There's a conversation all about third spaces,
Mm.
which basically you have home, you have work. What is the third space? In the past, we used to have community centers, malls, like whatever, all of these like churches, places where you go to be with people that isn't work or home.
Mm.
And a lot of those places
In
are
England, it was the
disappearing.
pub. In England, it was the pub.
In the pub, yeah. And a
You
lot of
know,
those places are disappearing in a lot
dying
of
out.
ways.
A pint now in England, a pint's so expensive that people just don't want to go and buy pints of beer in
Oh
pubs
my
anymore.
God. Yeah. Where I live, people just stand on the street and drink. And, I don't really blame them. Like, as annoying as it is, we have a piss corner, as we call it. Um, as annoying as it is, it's like, I remember I don't drink much anymore. And I went to the pub to meet a friend the other day. And she was like, well, how much is it? I haven't been here in a while. How much is a pint? £3? And I was like, how much is your cheapest pint? And he was like, 6.50. And it's just, what's
It's
the point?
insane. Yeah. Get two of those, and yeah, that's it. That's your fun done. But let's get back to your art. So your journey is quite an interesting one. You studied in the US in,
Yes.
did you study in Baltimore?
Yeah, at the Maryland Institute College of Art. It's a really good school. In fact, I mean, I was just happened to have been grown up like 8 minutes from it. Yeah, so I actually went first to a magnet school, which is a public high school that you can study a particular craft in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same as any other public high school in the States, same courses and stuff. You just get more classes in a particular field. So I went for visual art. That's where I learned, traditional observational painting and drawing. That's where I learned photography and sculpture and all that stuff. That was like totally life changing because before that I was in private school and I felt totally like lost and like misunderstood and I didn't feel like I belonged there at all. And
So when you picked
luckily,
up a paintbrush, it gave you a purpose, or more just the visual arts in general? It gave you purpose to.
visual arts in general, like I
Mm,
always was drawing. So like
mm.
in school, in this private school with uniforms, I would always carry a sketchbook around. I was really into anime in middle school. That was like a really big creative outlet for me, that learning that kind of like drawing. And it was so clear to my parents that I had this thing that I cared so much about. And not everyone is going to invest in that in a child. Not people have the luxury to invest in that in a child.
Mm.
There's a reason people want you to like go to school for engineering or whatever. And it's because, being to go study art is a big financial risk for a lot of people. I'm super lucky to have parents who could help me pay for school and who also emotionally supported me becoming an
Mm.
artist. And thank God that just kind of paid off a little bit. Um, but yeah, so I went to this school and I applied and I got scholarship to go to MICA, which was an amazing experience too. And then and I studied painting, got my bachelor's, and then I opened a gallery in Baltimore for 3 years after that. And I didn't really find my painting practice until around 2017. it's like I had all this skill, but I didn't know what to do with it.
What, so because the gallery kind of took precedence, or it just took up so much time?
No, I think when I was in school, I was spending all this time learning how to render something, how to create something, how to paint, color theory, all that stuff. But
Mm.
I didn't really know what art was for me and what to do with it. Like I
Yeah.
knew I cared about it, but I didn't know what I was saying with it or what I wanted to say with it. And so I didn't really have much of an urge to make art after I got out of university. And so I went straight into doing the gallery, which was really educational because I learned what I cared about in other people's work. I really cared about just this like authentic need to connect with something, to make something, whether it was, neon and concrete sculptures about space operas or soft sculptures about motherhood or paintings about, the sensitivity of being like queer and having a big family and all this stuff. It just comes down to the person themselves, and the work that moved me was just things where I could really feel how much they cared. And so for me, I think naturally, I had a lot of quite traumatic experiences in college and through those years. And I think it takes time to learn how to communicate or process those things. And in 2017, after, as I was closing the gallery, I started doing these self portraits. I started painting again, first and foremost, which was very exciting. And I started doing these self portraits, and I didn't know why I was doing self portraits, but I just had this feeling that I wanted to do them. And after like 6 months or so, I realized that I think my subconscious was ready to start like processing the shit I went through. And it made the most sense to do it through my own image, especially because my body has been something that I've had a lot of like struggle with. I had really bad body dysmorphia growing up. I had really bad relationships with like food and movement and stuff. And painting yourself over and over again, really getting to know what you look like without all of these layers of other people's opinions. Um, that has been like one of the best things I've ever done for myself, I think.
Wow.
Because
Could I ask you, is it sort of like you had control over your body because you could paint your body and you could observe yourself through your own eyes kind of thing?
yeah,
Was that the thing that
yeah, very
attracted
much
you to?
so. I
Mm.
think so many there's so many experiences I had where I had no agency over my body, whether it was how it looked, what was happening to it, you know, it's to choose to paint yourself and to put it out in the public. That alone is an act of like reclamation and being like, this is mine. And you're seeing this how I want you to see it.
Mm.
And especially when you choose to be super vulnerable. And I talk about how exposure to me is almost like an armor or almost like something that, helps me take back my body. It's like
Hmm.
I'm letting you see my nude body. My body's in this sort of frank, unflattering, unfiltered position. And I'm choosing to show you that. And
Mm.
I think that action alone was,
Because it's funny because I was looking at your work, I was thinking, is she kind of doing what Cindy Sherman did with photographs in paint? But when you're speaking to you now, I realize it's actually not like that at all. That Cindy Sherman was kind of saying, look how different and look how weird and crazily different I can look. Whereas you're not at all. You're kind of
yeah,
doing the opposite of that. You're taking full ownership and saying, this is what I want you to see through my eyes.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And I think in terms of the role playing and the sort of, her taking on all of these different characters and these different performances, I relate to that, but in the sense of how I think there's many sides to the self, and everything every time I'm depicting myself, even if it's as like a frothing wild woman or a murderer or an ingenue or a witch or whatever, those are all still me. They're just a single facet of me. It's like a way I'm talking about a single side of the self, whether it's like fear, rage, lust, reconciliation, fear, I think is a really big one. And like the first one I
fear
really started.
fear fear seems to be a big motif, and like you say, it's sort of taking control of your body and taking control of your fears as well.
Yeah.
This ownership aspect of your art, being able to be in control of yourself and your, what you're seeing and what you're thinking. Yeah, that's really fascinating. It actually gives a much more deeper level of understanding to your paintings now you talk about it like that.
Yeah, because I think I sometimes when I first started making this work, I think some people would be like, why would you paint yourself that way? And I get it, because if your understanding of art is to make something pretty or to make something that deifies or reveres the subject, then that doesn't make sense to do a painting that isn't reverent or pretty or palatable. But I think so much of my work is a reflection of what I'm going through. And being super honest about that has been a great way to cope with my very real life experiences and feelings.
Mm.
And I think that honesty comes through the painting. And and yeah, it's kind of like, whether you like it or not as the viewer, this is what's happening, versus something that I'm trying to, make for the viewer to like.
I get this deep sense of confidence that you have. I'm not sure if it's always been there or if it's something that you've created over time. Certainly through art, I have gained a confidence that I didn't
Yeah.
have when I was young. But a lot of artists do seem to have this, and I think I think they get it, and it grows within them through their art and through their journey.
Yeah.
Because you're expressing yourself and you're dealing with the honesty and the truth within yourself and life and what you think and stuff like that. And that does give you a certain confidence over the years.
Also, frankly, we have a coping mechanism that other people don't. And I think many people will never find a coping mechanism, like a really healthy one,
Mm.
that helps them process what they're going through, even if it's not conscious. Like, I think there's something happening that I can't articulate, like when I'm painting. I just
Yeah.
know it makes me feel better.
A
And
hundred
sometimes,
percent, 100%. I mean, some people find the gym, they go to the gym.
yeah,
Now, I've done that and I've gone to the gym from time to time. It doesn't work for me.
yeah.
The only thing that works for me is painting or creating and
And I think for some people, the gym is about this personal relationship, and that's when I think it becomes healthy versus this like social pressure, like whatever thing that's going on. I think,
Oh, it does work for some people, they find
yeah,
the gym and it's their
it's like
it's their
meditation.
church. Absolutely. It's their church. They love it. For me personally, it doesn't. I go there. I'm like, I don't want to be around these people. I mean, like, there's all this like pressure about, not pressure, but there's all, a lot of people are like, you should get into martial arts. That's the new thing that gives you confidence, all this stuff. I went to a jiu-jitsu class. I hated it.
Well, if you're someone who doesn't want to like be vulnerable around people all the time, like being in the gym
I
is
don't
super
like being
vulnerable.
touched. I don't
Yeah,
like being
I don't want to
hugged
be touched.
particularly.
I don't want people looking at me.
Yeah.
Like, that's like a quite, if you're not, that's normal. I think it depends
Yeah,
on the
I
kind of
think
person
it's
you
normal.
are. Whereas painting is totally an isolated experience. It's just you and the canvas. And I think that is something that I thrive in, is this like super personal echo chamber, basically, that you're creating for yourself.
Mm.
And, you know, I invite people in sometimes when it comes to collaborating, like sourcing reference photos or like, but for me, because I'm painting myself, it really is totally an isolated experience. And
But I think it doesn't work for everyone. I think a lot of the reason
yeah,
why it works for me is because I trained myself from a very young age. I had a really crazy, strange, difficult upbringing. And so I used to go and isolate when I was young and draw, to kind of find peace, find control, like we're
it's your
talking about.
sanctuary.
It was my sanctuary. So it's like, the gym just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah.
I feel competitive. I actually start to feel a bit angry in the gym. I get like a little bit angry, and it's not good for my mental health at all.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing that I'm used to, is art and isolation and creating. And
Yeah. And I think that means, and then you can save your social battery for the people you love and experiences you want to engage in. I think, some people are really good at going to the gym and like tuning everyone out, and they're there in their own little world and they don't even care about anyone around them. I am super, super conscious because I was raised in an environment that was like very toxic when it came to the way you look. And, you know, exercising was like a punishment rather than something healthy and happy and, you know, difficult, but it was about, you know, bettering yourself or getting to know your body better, being stronger, whatever. So even though I've done a lot of work with that, the gym to me still is the place that I don't feel totally comfortable. For me, it's walking and like, you know, going out with my dog. Like that's the best way to deal with, you know, movement. And that's something that I've been dealing with my whole life. But I think
Well, yeah, like I like running because it's again it's the isolation. I just put my headphones on and I don't have to. The gym situation just doesn't work for me. It's not that I don't like exercise. I do. Like I like running and
yeah,
things like that. But it's very much an isolated, solitary. That's how I'm designed, you know.
yeah,
And my son, for example, like he likes fishing. He goes fishing and he's obsessed with fishing. And
ultimate meditation.
that's great. Like I'm not trying to be judgmental. Everyone has to find their thing, but I just know what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And
Yeah.
certainly rolling around with men in a padded cell, just it wasn't my thing.
Yeah, some people that's like the ultimate healthy way to expel anger, and for some people it's like the worst thing in the world. Don't touch me; it's
Well,
sweaty, it's terrible.
it's now got this fashion thing. Like Mark Zuckerberg's taking it up. You know, all the tech
Oh
pros they're
yeah,
becoming jujitsu guys. So I thought, you know, I'll give it a go, and thinking it was going to change my life. I walked in and I hated it. I was like,
yeah,
how can people like this? You're standing about an inch away from whoever, and there's boys and girls there.
yeah.
Men and women, you know, whatever. But it was like, it was so claustrophobic. And I was like, I am out. I walked out in the middle of the session. No, it hadn't even started. Like,
Also, being aware enough to be like, I hate this is
oh,
really
yeah.
healthy.
It's
I
10,
think
10,
it's
10 minutes in. I literally said, I'll be back in a minute. And I just walked out.
that's awesome. Yeah, I think it's good to be like really aware of how you feel and just draw lines and be like, this is not for me, and just stick with it. I think that's super great. I think, but no, painting has always, you know, especially since 2017, when I really got like what art is for me. And it's this sort of way to talk to myself and this
Mm,
way to deal with this shit.
mm,
Um, that's when I really started to have this amazing relationship with the studio. And one thing I promised myself was that I can go to the studio, but I don't have to do anything. And that promise has been really fruitful because I never want my studio to feel like an oppressive space or a stressful space. Like it's one thing, you know, a little bit of stress is okay. A little bit of, you know, anxiety is okay. When you have a deadline, you're getting things going, it's structure, it's motivation. But I never want it to be like you have to go this for this amount of time every single day. You have to produce this much, blah, blah, blah. I go sometimes and I just watch Netflix and I like don't do anything. But
yeah.
going is the most important part.
Yeah.
And in going, you often end up doing something because you're there.
Yeah.
So
It's not so much discipline as consistency.
yeah, and also in creating opportunities for yourself, because for me, the way that I paint, I know people who will sit down and paint for 8 hours or whatever, like like a 9 to 5 job. I
Mm,
can't do that. That makes I don't know how people do that. I think it's
mm,
amazing, not how my brain works. I have these like bursts and these waves of motivation, and the more I'm there, the more I can catch those moments. And so it's more like intense working for like an hour or two, a break, another hour.
and
And
how far away is your studio from where you live?
oh, it's super close. I used to live like right next to it, but I moved one stop away. So it's only a tube stop away or a 45-minute walk. And it's like a really beautiful walk.
Oh,
I haven't been
perfect.
doing it much because my dog gets stressed at the beginning of the walk, but she'll be okay.
Your studio dog.
Yeah, she's great. She's
Is
sleeping on
she
my bed.
is she good in the studio?
She is perfect. I adopted her in September, and that was the one thing I was worried about. I was like, okay, like, what if she hates the studio? What if she's annoying? But she literally just passes out, and it's amazing. She's so calm there. She is way less calm at home. Like, she's crazy here because she just wants to go in the backyard all the time. But at the studio, she's just completely relaxed. She lets me stay till like 7, 8 o'clock. We walk home.
That's incredible.
It's amazing. She is the perfect studio dog in so many ways.
And when you came to England to study, you did your master's in England. Was
Yeah.
there a difference between the art school system in America to the art school system in England? What was the
Oh
difference?
yeah. big time. I think America's more focused on skill building, like
Hmm.
actual physical learning how to paint. We don't learn much about philosophy at all in our, at least in the BA programs. That was a big thing I noticed where I moved here and it's very independent. Like I was at the Royal College of Art. You just do your thing and then your tutor comes every once in a while and you have like critical feedback and there's a dissertation which was like a huge deal for me, but also not something that we really do in America in
How
BA.
many words has the dissertation got to be?
Mine ended up being mine only ended up being like 8,000 or something, but I
Okay.
think I don't know what the minimum was. Maybe it was 5,000. I think the great thing about RCA, honestly, is they were very flexible with the dissertation.
Hmm. And
They
is
let
this
you,
when it did, so this dissertation was when you were talking about the horror movies and
yes.
yeah.
So I wrote mine, yeah, within the format of a haunted house story that also kind of devolved into it became very abstract because as there was this very stereotypical campy horror story happening with these parts of the house talking to the reader and talking about dialectics and Deleuze and Proust and whatever, there would be this writing that would sort of interrupt the story and cut through. And that was sort of my own personal writing on trauma. And basically, in the end, it's revealed that the house is the author and these people are sort of in the house being punished for the experience of the author because it's like the body is the house. Um,
Wow, sounds like it kind of sounds like a Del Toro film or something like that.
oh, I love him.
I'd love
He's
to watch. I'd love to read it and
yeah,
watch
I'll
the
send
film.
you the PDF. It's super crazy. But that was so exciting for me too with writing. And I do a lot of writing now alongside my work because I think that, as you were saying, like there's sometimes the artist's insight really does change the way you see the work.
Yeah.
And I do think my work stands on its own, but I think the context I can provide or the writings I can provide to go alongside it really do transform the experience and enhance it. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, that was the
I
first
love
time.
writing as well. I think it's just another form of creativity, but it very much organizes your thoughts. This is what I
Mm,
think, and you have to kind of organize what exactly what you're thinking and explain what you're thinking, so you kind of explain it in your own head as well, and it just makes you understand yourself and the world around you at a much deeper level. It's kind of more intense than painting in a way. Like
yeah.
you can get into a flow state with writing, sure, but you actually need to be focused. Well, for me, I need to be focused on what I'm trying to express and things like that. Whereas with painting, I can kind of lose myself.
I also think with writing, there's a lot more rules. Ooh, excuse me. Hello?
I can
I
see
did something
you.
with my hand and something happened.
Uh,
Um, I think with writing, there's a lot of rules that we've been taught about
mm,
what is good writing, what is proper language. And those are in the back of your mind and they can be quite limiting. And my dissertation was the first time that I wrote more creatively in a way that made sense to me.
mm-hmm.
It was still academic in a sense because, of course, I was still talking about different concepts. I was citing sources and blah, blah, blah. But I think that was one of the first times I really wrote how I want to write that makes sense to me. And that's true with painting. That's true with drawing. For example, I have a relationship with painting that is second nature at this point. I know how I paint. Drawing, I have no idea how I draw. Like,
Mm.
I can draw, but it's like I've never pushed myself to figure out how I draw. You know, I'm still stuck in the rule stage. And so I find it quite intimidating. And I felt that way about writing too, especially because I'm dyspraxic. I struggle to read like dense text and I think finally interweaving it into my art practice and making it an extension of my work made it a lot less scary and made it easier to approach for me.
Yeah, I find it increasingly hard to read. Like when I was in my early 20s, I used to just consume book after book after book, and there wasn't really back then there wasn't really much distraction, and there was I had a real need at that time, like when from the age of 20 to like I don't know 28, 30, to just consume information and really just read all the great works and stuff like that, and read a lot. I used to read a lot about history and stuff. I find getting the time of the day now to read for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours. It's really
Well, you
difficult.
have like 4 kids now, right?
I got children, but also the distractions that come through the
Social
ping, the
media.
pings on your social media, whatever. It just becomes, it's like the world is trying to sort of stop you from concentrating.
Well, and now they're trying to, I think, what was it? Someone was saying in 1984, one of the methods that they did to like control a population was condense books into like 5-minute summaries.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah. I got what in 1984, George Orwell's 1984.
I think
To
so.
read that again. That was one of the books that I
Yeah.
remember reading that literally in a day. I was just like obsessed. When I started reading it, it just took me into this world.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah,
But I think
condensing
our world
books.
is encouraging us to not investigate and to not think critically so much anymore. I think and part of me thinks that's intentional. I mean, look at America, they're dismantling the Department of Education, they're banning books, they're doing all sorts of stuff. A unlearned and uneducated and unread population is much easily
Easier to
controlled.
control.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I do remember in 1984 them talking about control and also just the noise, the constant noise. Like, they're constantly told things, like our phones. They're constantly telling us things that we don't really need to know. It's
Yeah.
like it's a sort of form of mind control, isn't it?
Yeah, it's destabilizing and it keeps your attention away from what's the most important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are some of the artists growing up that really influenced your work? Because Nicola, when you came around to have, when we first met, when you came around to have pancakes, she told me that I remember. I think she said the words, "Lydia can paint her tits off." So I was like interested. I was interested to know what kind of artists you were looking at when you were growing up and learning to paint, and who you still look at now. Who your inspirations are.
I was educated in the sort of school of painting of like Jenny Saville and Eric Fischl and Lucian Freud and John Singer Sargent, a mix. Like a blend between sort of like late 19th century, early 20th century painting and contemporary figurative painting that was like a bit more challenging conceptually.
And you've always been drawn to painting, like that's your medium, yeah.
And I've always been a figurative artist. There was a period in university, because when I was in uni between 2010 and 2014, figurative painting was not hot again. Like,
yeah.
It wasn't, I was like one of the only representational painters. And I tried not to be. I was like, I'm going to try abstraction. It's like so forced and bad and ugly, I've always been a figurative painter.
But look at the other painters of those generations, like Jenny Saville's generation or Lucian Freud's generation. The ones that really are remembered are the figurative painters,
Well, again, like I said, I think we're always going to want to look at people, as much as we try to reject that urge. Even when abstract expressionism and all this stuff was like considered high art and the most important thing, Alice Neal was painting and making some of the most important paintings in art history, and no one gave a shit about it at that time. It wasn't until she was like in her 60s, 70s that people actually cared. And so you have to persevere through that. Like, if this is your language, and we all have different language of communication, whether it's music, painting, photography, whatever, and imagery, if painting people makes the most sense to you, you have to it takes confidence to accept that when no one cares about it. I got lucky that people started caring about it.
Right.
It might be going out the window again sometime soon. But yeah, you gotta communicate in the way that makes sense to you and it's natural to you.
Well, she has an incredible story, Alice Neal, but it's amazing that she worked in the dark for so many years, but her stuff is still remembered. What I think is that figurative portrait work, figurative painting has this lasting quality to it because, like you say, it's like having a mirror. Have you heard the Bjork song "Human Behavior"? That we're so fascinated, we're endlessly fascinated in each other. She says in the song, like,
I haven't, but I believe it.
Yeah, humans are just endlessly fascinated in each other. It's like a mirror. You're kind of looking at a mirror of yourself when you're looking at a portrait or a figurative
painting. And we're made to look at each other and to interpret each other's bodies and feelings and faces. Like, it's something primal and like, something you can't really quantify. And I think that's what's very special about figurative painting. When you look at someone and you feel something, like that's very special. That's something that I cherish, especially when I'm sharing my own body and my own experiences. Um, yeah, but I think Jenny Saville, I still think she's a great painter, although I have some like ethical issues with how she kind of, I remember reading an interview with her when she had a show come out with Gagosian that was kind of the first time she was making these self-portraits of like being a mom and all this stuff. And she used to say, I used to think my work was anti-beauty, and she would paint, trans people, disabled people, fat people, like she wanted to shock people. But to me, that's just reinforcing the way people already feel about those bodies. And
Mm.
it's like, she's such a brilliant painter, but I think sort of like using other people's bodies to shock people, like put yourself out there, girl. Like that's why her first paintings were so amazing. There were these self-portraits that was like super crazy and like uh almost disfigured in the way that she saw herself.
Yeah.
Um but anyways, formally,
That's a really interesting take. She has an exhibition opening at the National Portrait Gallery in like, well, I think it's on the.
really, I gotta go see it because
Oh, you
as much
didn't
as I
know?
disagree, she's still so important to my
Oh, she's incredible. But
so
like,
important.
I think it's on the. I think it might be on the 12th or the 19th, but it's this month. And no, it's on
Oh,
the 20th of June until September. Jenny Saville's retrospective is on at the National Portrait
oh my
Gallery.
God, this is very
It's a
exciting.
huge show. So yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna go see that. I also have to see. I saw Madonna of the Rocks and some Vermeer paintings are at National Gallery right now, so I gotta go see those.
Oh, incredible! Yeah, Madonna on the Rocks. And which Vermeer painting? Can you remember?
I can't remember. It's a good one though.
I've just written something on Vermeer's.
I'm a Flemish head. I love Flemish
Oh,
and
really?
Dutch painters.
Are you on Substack?
No, I
Because
haven't gotten to that.
you should have a look at Substack to publish. It's basically it's a self publishing platform. So if you've
Yeah.
written things about your art, you can just direct people to your Substack, and it's all there, like self published. But I've just written something on Vermeer, like how he was trying to. He was actually living in a really horrific time. It was like full of war,
Oh my
and
God, yeah.
it was like a terrible time in Dutch history. But he painted like these scenes of domestic peace and bliss, and he was actually living in a he lived in a pub and he had a very chaotic life. He had like 9 children and stuff like that. So when you look at his paintings, it's not anything like his life was. It's incredible when
I
you
think
see it in that
his
context.
work is just stunning, and there's a quality of light. The first time I went to Amsterdam, I saw like the light from the painting. It was really amazing how different it was. And I remember I was in my friend's studio. She was at the Rijks Academy at the time, and it literally looked like a Vermeer painting, the light hitting her. And
Yeah,
it's really incredible how people develop different sensibilities based on where they're from. And yeah,
definitely. Like the
I
Renaissance.
love Rembrandt. I love Rubens. I love all those freaks. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's funny you were talking about light and Vermeer and things like that. And I think, like when you look at the Tuscan
Oh,
Renaissance paint,
hey.
Mir's up. Mir's woken up.
Sorry, Mia heard of doggy. Can I pick you up? Oh, here she is.
Oh, there she is. Cutie. Is she Staffordshire Bull
Yeah,
Terrier?
she's all
Yeah,
staffy.
she's a Staffy. She's gorgeous color.
She's a very good girl.
She's a gorgeous color. She loves
Go
mummy.
back to sleep. It's okay. She's listening to the dog outside.
Oh, I was just gonna say that that the English light, the London light,
No.
I think that's like an
Hey,
underrated aspect of.
sorry. The English light.
Well, specifically the London light. You know how in England you get this grey silvery light that's
Yeah.
it's very like because of all the grey sky and things like that.
I
You
use
get this.
natural light a lot, and I think
There's a
definitely.
specific light in England,
Yeah.
and I think Lucian Freud really captured it in his when you look at his landscape work or his outdoor paintings, and sometimes in his studio behind it through the like he's done paintings of his family, of his children, and you can see the London landscape through the windows behind, and he just captures this really white silver light of England really well, I
Yeah.
think. But yeah.
It is like a bit melancholy, but it's really beautiful.
It's great for
Actually,
painting because it's not
yeah.
sunny. Sunny is like, it's so hard to control when it's sunny.
And the colors get really wild in the sun.
Yeah, absolutely. Lydia, I love talking to you. It's been such a pleasure. Honestly, as we've covered so much ground. I had all these questions that I wanted to talk
I'm a
to you about, and
yapper.
we went somewhere completely different. So it was
I
fantastic.
yeah, I hope that's okay. I go
It's
on
brilliant.
tangents. I'm a talker, so
No, it makes a really interesting conversation. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And
absolutely.
let's speak again soon. I'll come and hit you up at your studio and have a look at what you're making.
Yeah, that'd be great. Have a
Uh,
wonderful day.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lydia.
Bye bye.
Bye.